Now this is Luke, and we're going chapter 5, verse 27 through to 32. After he went out and noticed a tax collector named Levi sitting in the tax booth, and he said to him, "Follow me." And he left everything behind and got up and began to follow him. And Levi gave a big reception for him in his house. And there was a great crowd of tax collectors and other people who were reclining at the table with them. The Pharisees and their scribes began grumbling at his disciples, saying, "Why do you eat and drink with the tax collectors and sinners?" And Jesus answered and said to them, "It's not those who are well who need a physician, but those who are sick. I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance." This is a wonderful story. This is Levi, the tax collectors were hated, and rightly so, by the Jewish people. They were like people who were collaborators, like people. You remember when the Germans invaded the Channel Islands or into France, and there were those who were collaborating with the Germans. And so it was here. The Romans had taken over Israel, and these were people who were collecting money, taking their cut. They saw the invasion of the Romans, or the occupation of the Romans, as a chance for them to get rich. This was Levi. And he probably saw Jesus as a great religious teacher, and he thought, well, he's not going to have anything to do with me. He's not going to want to even talk to me. I'll just carry on getting rich and just doing what I do. And Jesus turns to him and he says, "Follow me." I'm sure he couldn't believe it, that Jesus would even talk to him or even command him to follow him. And that's what he does. And then it says he threw a big reception, a big party. I don't know, perhaps he just thought, well, I'm following Jesus now. I'm leaving everything. In fact, it says that. He said he left everything behind and got up and began to follow him. Perhaps he thought, well, I've got all this money that I've earned or that I've accumulated as a tax. I'm just going to blow it. I'm just going to blow it, and we're going to have a great big reception. I'm going to invite all of my friends, all my tax collector friends, and Jesus, and perhaps in the language we use now, perhaps they'll get saved. Perhaps they will. And he just invites them all in. And the Pharisees start grumbling, it says, at his disciples. They didn't have the bottle to come to Jesus and grumble at him, but they're grumbling at his disciples. Perhaps the disciples were kind of what you would think of as good people. I mean, Peter's brother was Andrew, who had been a disciple of John the Baptist. They were upstanding people, and they would have been invited to this party, and they perhaps would have felt a little bit uneasy, rubbing shoulders with tax collectors, with prostitutes, with the kind of underclass that surrounded the tax collectors. And perhaps they were on the outside of the party, and the Pharisees saying, "What are you doing with all these people?" And they start grumbling, and they say to the disciples, "Why do you eat and drink with Why do you eat and drink with tax collectors and sinners?" They're grumbling at the disciples. They're not grumbling at Jesus. They say, "Why are you with all these people?" And you can almost imagine Jesus shouting across the room, "It's not those who are well who need a physician, but those who are sick." And perhaps the disciples just came in, yeah. It's not the religious people. And let us be those people who will go to the sick, to the needy, to the people who you think, are they the last person who would get saved? And when people do get saved, let's encourage them to throw a big party and invite everybody to hear the gospel, to hear the good news that Jesus came to seek and to save those who were lost. Praise his name.